Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Yamara Angel, and I'm the strategy manager for post-secondary access here at Alabama Possible. And welcome to our Navigating Financial Aid for Immigrant Families webinar this morning, where we'll have some definitions and we will discuss some options for students who are not eligible for financial aid as well. We would like to take this time to thank our sponsors. Because of their support, we're able to provide trainings for free. We would also like to thank our partners from the Alabama Commission on Higher Education, the Alabama Community College System, the Alabama State Department of Education, and the Get Educated, which is the Common Black College application. Some housekeeping notes. Please keep your microphones on mute at all times. Please disable any AI note takers unless accommodations are needed. Please let us know by sending us a message. This webinar will be recorded and posted to youtube.com/Alabama Possible within the next few days. Submit your questions in the chat and we'll answer them throughout and towards the end of the webinar. And finally, we value everyone's feedback, but it is especially important for high school educators seeking professional development credit to stay until the very end and answer the final set of poll questions to receive full credit. If you post your college-going efforts on social media, tag us at AL Goes to College, and don't forget to use the following hashtags. For those who are unfamiliar with the Alabama Goes to College campaign, there are three main components to the campaign. The first is the Cash for College, and the goal is for every graduating senior to complete the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid before they graduate from high school so that they can access federal, state, and institutional aid to pay for their education after high school. Second, the Alabama College Application Week, which is a part of the national effort designed to help high school seniors, especially first generation and low-income students, navigate the college application process and apply to at least one post-secondary institution. And then third, the College and Career Decision Day, which celebrates students committing to pursue their education, credentials, pursue trade, skilled trade, or join the military after high school. So the agenda for today, we will review key terms and data, explain relevant federal policy, describe federal aid eligibility based on citizenship status, investigate complicated FAFSA scenario, review aid options for students who cannot complete the FAFSA, and explore strategies and tools for working with families.
Awesome. So we would love to know if y'all do work with an immigrant student population, who is the main person who is supporting their college and career planning, just to give us a sense of what it looks like in your school or in your district. All right, for most folks responding, it looks like the counselor is the main support person. So that was around 42% of our responses, but then a good distribution across the remaining options. So we appreciate your feedback there. I am going to go ahead and end this poll now.
So before we begin, we want to start with some terms and data. Some terms to keep in mind, immigrant, which refers to people residing in the United States who were not born in the US. An undocumented individual is a person who entered the US legally and immigration status has expired or entered the US without authorization. And then there's the DACA recipient, is a person who has been granted protection under the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which is a program that provides protection from deportation to people brought to the U.S. as children. But because the DACA program has been paused, you may encounter less students with DACA in your high schools. So now let's look at some data specific to Alabama. According to the American Community Survey from 2024, about 4.5% of Alabama residents are foreign born, meaning that they're born outside of the United States. The major immigrant groups from different countries in Alabama are from Mexico, Guatemala, India, China, and Korea. In Alabama, there are about 37,600 U.S. citizen children who are living with at least one undocumented parent. So now let's talk about federal policies that shape financial aid eligibility. So the federal student aid is responsible for managing the Student Financial Assistance Program authorized under Title IV of the Higher Education Act of 1965. These programs provide grants, work studies, and loan funds to students attending college or career schools. One of the first policies we need to understand is the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996. This law prohibits undocumented students from obtaining in-state tuition at public colleges and universities. Now, 25 states and the District of Columbia have passed their own laws that allow in-state tuition for undocumented students, essentially working around federal prohibition. However, Alabama has not passed a law like this, so some institutions in Alabama have allowed DACA students to receive in-state tuition rates, but this can vary by institution, and we would recommend that you follow up with the institution before. Another policy is the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996. This law bars provisions of state and local public benefits, including post-secondary benefits for what it calls non-qualified aliens. So what this means is that it disqualifies undocumented students from accessing financial aid, in-state tuition, and other public benefits. It also disqualifies undocumented immigrants from obtaining occupational licenses. So this is very significant because in the US, 1 in 4 jobs requires a license or credential. So we'll now go into eligibility for financial aid to guide students and families with the application process. Who is eligible? To be fully eligible to accept federal aid, students must meet the following criteria. First, they must be U.S. citizens, U.S. nationals, or an eligible non-citizen. And we'll define all of these terms and details in just a moment. They also should have a social security number. There are exceptions for students from the Republic of the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Republic of Palau. Students must also have a high school diploma, GED certificate, have completed an approved homeschool education, or meet one of the ability to benefit alternatives. Students must be enrolled or accepted as a regular student in eligible degrees or certificate programs. They also must maintain satisfactory academic progress in college. They must provide consent and approval to have federal tax information transferred directly to the FAFSA, and they must sign the certifying statement on the FAFSA where they attest that the information that they're providing is true and accurate. So we'll look into the citizenship status question on the FAFSA. The question asks if the students are a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, or an eligible non-citizen, or neither. Students will see these 3 options. Option 1, the student is a U.S. citizen or a U.S. national. So if a student selects this, they simply proceed forward with the application. There's option 2, the student is an eligible non-citizen. If they select this, they will need to provide their alien registration number, which is also called an A number. And then there is option 3, the student is not a citizen nor an eligible non-citizen. If they select this, they will need to proceed forward with they can proceed forward with the FAFSA application, but they do have very limited federal aid options. So in this case, they will need to contact financial aid office of each college that they're applying to after submitting the FAFSA to understand what other options they may have. So just to define all of these more explicitly and clearly, a U.S. citizen includes a person born in the 50 states, the District of Columbia, and in most cases, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, and the Northern Mariana Islands. The exception here would be children of foreign diplomatic staff who happen to be born in the U.S. and they are not automatically U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens may also include persons born abroad to parents or even one parent who is a U.S. citizen. A U.S. national includes native of the American Samoa Islands and Swans Islands. Option 2, eligible non-citizen. If a student is not a U.S. citizen or a U.S. national, they might still be eligible for financial aid, but they will need to provide certain documentation. These include students who have a green card, that's a form I-5 I-551, I-151, or an I-551C, making them permanent residents. It also includes students with an arrival departure record, which is the I-94 form, which is given to refugees, asylees, parolees, and other with certain protection statuses. Students with a T visa or whose parents have a T1 visa are eligible, and these are victims of human trafficking. Those with battered immigrant status under are eligible. These are victims of abuse. Citizens of the federal states of Micronesia, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, or the Republic of Palau are also eligible, and the Canadian-born Native Americans. So if students fall under any of these categories, they will select eligible non-citizen, and then they will enter their alien registration number as shown on the screenshot. And then there's option 3. Students that are not U.S. citizen, U.S. nationals, or eligible non-citizens, they will be not eligible for federal student aid, and then we'll select this. So this category includes students who have been granted the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. Students who are also not eligible are students with F1 or F2 student visas, J1 or J2 exchange visitor visas, G series visas related to international organizations, or U visas. Students who only have an employment authorization document, so that's a form I-766, are not eligible for federal aid, even if they have a social security number. And of course, students with no protection status, meaning that they do not have, they're undocumented and they don't have any protection status, they are not eligible for federal aid. And undocumented students should not be filling out this application. Undocumented students, DACA recipients, and students who only hold an employment authorization document are not eligible for federal aid. Some DACA recipients and EAD holders who have a Social Security might complete the FAFSA to determine eligibility of state or institutional aid. In this case, it is best to ask the college or university the student is applying to see if they are even required to fill out a FAFSA. To determine for other financial aid options at the school. If a student is not eligible for FAFSA, so undocumented students, they should be filling out a waiver, especially for your graduation requirements, to complete the FAFSA graduation requirement for your school. So this should be used carefully and only under proper guidance. Sorry. So then we go into, does a parent impact eligibility for a student? Does the citizenship status of parent impact the aid eligibility of a student? No, it does not impact the student's eligibility for aid. A U.S. citizen student is eligible for federal aid regardless of whether their parents are citizen, permanent residents, or undocumented. However, some of the parents' citizenship status might impact how the FAFSA is submitted, and it might impact some of the steps that follow submission. So we do strongly recommend that students with undocumented parents complete the FAFSA with an advocate who can guide them through the process from start to finish. And we're here to assist you. So if you need assistance with determining how to proceed, you can always call us and we can guide you through. When creating an FSA ID, which is required to sign the FAFSA electronically, a parent without a Social Security number will need to create an FSA ID by checking a box that indicates that they do not have a Social Security number. It is especially important to remember that if a parent has an individual tax identification number, or ITIN, they should not use the ITIN instead of a Social Security number. So this is what the checkbox looks like when they're creating FSA IDs. They will select, I do not have a Social Security number. The student might have to complete follow-up tasks if selected for verification. These tasks may include providing tax transcript, which sometimes can be a little bit challenging. So you can always contact us if you need assistance with this process. The direct data exchange does not transfer undocumented parents' tax federal tax information from the Internal Revenue Service to the Department of Education. These parents who are undocumented will have to manually input tax information. For undocumented parents who do not file taxes, they will need to select that they do not file taxes on the application, select the reason why, and enter. They will be followed with some income questions, and they will enter the income. A little warning about this, depending on the reason they select why they didn't file taxes, we have seen in the past that they only qualify for direct unsubsidized loans. So it is an important thing to keep in mind when you're assisting students with this process, especially if their parents are not filing taxes. So this is a screenshot where you can see where the questions that parents will be asked for manually when they're asked for manual income. So they will have to enter dollar amounts from their taxes into the form. Parents are also asked about their assets, so they will enter them in full dollar amounts. We will go into some scenarios to kind of work through some situations where you might encounter with students. Situation number one, Elizabeth. Elizabeth was born in the US and has a social security number. Elizabeth is considered a dependent student for the purposes of FAFSA. Her parents do not have a social security number. Only Elizabeth's father works and their parents file taxes jointly using their ITINs. How do we assist Elizabeth? And feel free to type your answers in the chat. Elizabeth is eligible for financial aid when creating FSA IDs. Her parents will check, I do not have a social security number when creating them. And then when answering their tax information, the parents will enter their information manually because of the direct data not being able to transfer directly to the application. And of course, Lisa said it, parents get an invite and then reach out to Alabama Possible for further assistance. So if parents need assistance, especially with the tax information, feel free to share our number and we can definitely help them through that process. Then we go into scenario two. Jason was born in the US and has a social security number. Jason is considered a dependent student for the purposes of FAFSA. His parents do not have social security numbers. Both parents work, but they do not make enough income to have tax filing requirement. How can we best assist Jason? So in this situation, Jason is eligible for financial aid. The parents can check the I do not have a social security number box when creating an FSA ID. When answering the tax question, the parents will be able to select that they do not file taxes, select the reason why. And in this case, they will not file taxes because their income was below the tax filing threshold. So we would recommend that they follow up with the school's financial aid office for follow-up regarding that. And obviously, also contacting us to better explain the situation and the process would also be a great and HICA as well. So there is a question in the chat. Usually the most common concern from students is process puts their undocumented parents at risk in the current political climate since it's going to the federal government and the U.S. Department of Education issues and threats. Last year, I believe Alabama Possible advised against FAFSA completion until more information. What about this year's information? Taxes, their information is already with the federal government. If the only situation family might want to consider if they want to file FAFSA would be if they've never like filed taxes, they don't have an ITIN number or never had an ITIN number, they've never like Medicaid or any federal assistance programs, then that's when we're like, maybe you might want to consider it. And then what are the next steps for the students too? Because then they're also like not gonna get federal aid that they're entitled to. Also consider what they're wanting to do as well. So yes, we sometimes struggle to get immigrant and sometimes non-immigrant families to do the waiver, let alone a FAFSA. So we need advice on convincing them there that speaks the language so that they're freely able to ask questions on the FAFSA that might be helpful. Again, that's why knowing like the policies and being up to date with like what policies are, like changing. The Department of Education shouldn't be sharing any information unless they're like explicitly asked to. From a certain situation, but sit down with your families and what makes them comfortable, assuring them that the Department of Education shouldn't be sharing this information outside. And again, like if you have any families that feel comfortable with someone that speaks Spanish, I'm also bilingual. I speak Spanish, so like always have them call us. Or if you also want to share HICA's number, which is the Hispanic and Immigrant Center of Alabama's number. Okay, so scenario three. Iris and her family came to the US when she was 13. She is currently only has an employment authorization document, but her parents do not have protection status. Iris is considered a dependent student. She has a social security number, but her parents do not have a social security number. How can we best assist Iris? So Iris does not qualify for federal aid. So what other options does Iris have? Private scholarships on a national, state, or institutional level. It really depends on the institutional and the state, of course, because some may require proof of citizenship or FAFSA completion. So what we recommend is that to ask the college if the student should complete the FAFSA or some alternative so that they can calculate Iris's SAI that could be useful for scholarships or other types of aid. So like if Iris is ending to complete a FAFSA, she will indicate that she's neither a citizen or eligible non-citizen, and then also try to connect them with resources and organizations who can help them. So we'll talk a little bit more about the resources later on the presentation. And of course, staying up with state and federal policies. Let's go into scenario four, which is our last scenario today. Manuel and his mother have been granted asylum on Form I-94. They have received their social security numbers. Manuel is considered a dependent student for the purposes of FAFSA. Both Manuel and his mother work. How can we best assist Manuel? If the student has been granted asylum, so the student will be eligible for Title IV. Manuel will use his social security number to complete the FAFSA. When selecting the question about citizenship, he will select I am an eligible non-citizen and enter his A number. If selected for verification, they might need to provide more paperwork, reporting taxes on the tax information on the FAFSA. It will really depend on where they filed their taxes. So whether it was in the US or in their country of origin. If the parent filed a foreign tax return, they will need to convert how much the parent made in US dollars. So keep that in mind as well. Or you can always call us so that we can give more guidance towards this process. Awesome. Thank you all for participating. So let's now talk about aid options for students who aren't eligible for federal financial aid. So if a student is not eligible for federal aid, scholarships are likely their best option. Some colleges and universities might offer institutional aid in forms of scholarships. So again, this varies by institution. Some schools have generous programs for undocumented students or DACA recipients, while others might have very limited options. So check with the school's financial aid office at the school to see what options the students may have. There are also private scholarship opportunities available from local organizations. So like in Alabama, there are organizations that offer scholarships to students, like the HICA scholarship and Fiesta. There are also other community organizations, churches, and civic groups that may offer scholarships without citizenship requirements. A lot of times it is best to follow up with each of these institutions to see what requirements are there for if the requirements aren't clear for the student. So other aid options, so they have national scholarship-based databases. So there is the JLV College Counseling, CapEx, Immigrants Rising, and this one is really nice because it's really color coded for students. They can filter by regions because a lot of these scholarships are regional or national, so it really helps identify also like if the scholarships are for undocumented students or if they're exclusively just for DACA students. Get Schools also has scholarship opportunities. And then there's also Maldive, which offers scholarships in the form of PDF and other resources as well, that students can refer to if they need resources. Other resources that we have a blog post with recursos de FAFSA en español. So it has aid eligibility requirements and explanations, scholarship resources. We also have a one pager in our drive with college going FAQs for undocumented families, so the students and their parents. And then there's also a blog post on advising and supporting mixed status families. So now I want to so one thing to keep in mind, be mindful, not everyone is comfortable talking about their citizenship status. So don't directly ask someone about their status. So let the student or the parent bring it up if they're willing to, creating a space for them to share. But don't pressure them. They eventually, like if they feel comfortable, they will definitely let you know. Make a conversations more universal and exclusive. So for example, like if you're in a classroom setting and you're explaining the FSAID process, you might want to say something like, you can create an FSAID for a student and one parent. Unless the parent does not have a social security number, then they will select the box stating that they do not have a social security number. So this provides the information without like, singling out anyone or making assumptions of the student. Educate yourself. So open your doors and increase families' comfort by knowing the policies and understanding how to help them. Building trust by building relationships. So be aware of the situations these families may be facing. And I see a lot of concerns on on y'all like this morning. So that is also very helpful because they know that you know you're concerned for them. Verbalizing your commitment to confidentiality and discretion. So tell families explicitly that their information is protected and that you're a safe resource. You can also use visuals to show your this commitment. So, for example, displaying a symbol of the dreamer's butterfly in your office that signals that you're an ally and a safe person to talk to. Build partnerships. So, consider forming partnerships with nonprofit, community-based organizations or trusted leaders in your community, and enlist their participation in your FAFSA efforts. So these organizations can establish trust with the immigrant families that are in your communities and can help bridge these connections as well. Avoid microaggressions, so create a safe and private space to have these conversations. Be mindful of assumptions that you might be making. There's a great video linked in the slides, which we'll follow up with on recognizing and avoiding microaggressions. So you'll get that link in the follow-up email. And then also consider language access. So having interpreters at events so that all family members can be involved in financial aid process. Try not to rely on the students to translate these complicated financial information for their parents. So try bringing in someone who can definitely interpret better for the parents and ask all these questions like we were talking about earlier. So just another resource that we want to talk about, toolkit takeaways, which you can find in the Alabama Possible YouTube channel. Before we wrap up today, I just wanted to remind you about our upcoming events. So we have on Wednesday, January 14th, we have College Admissions 101, which is our part two to the series, which for out-of-state institutions at 10:30. And then on Wednesday, January 21st, we have our first community conversation. So save the date at 10 a.m. You can register for these at alabamapossible.org/events to have your registration link. Okay, Gina has a question. If a student has a social security number but are not a citizen, they must also have another of documentation to be eligible for FAFSA. Yes, like those listed, and their federal student aid website, there is like a full list of all of these eligible non-citizen students that and they're like the forms that they need to have in order to be able to qualify for federal student aid. Do you ever do presentations directed at the immigrant community or have online office hours to help folks get in contact with us and we'll see if we have, if we can. But I have done presentations to the immigrant community in Spanish, so definitely reach out.
Yeah, I think it works best when y'all reach out whenever you see a need because we have hosted office hours in the past, and we've had a year where we've hosted 6 or 7 across the academic year, and almost none of them were attended. So I think if y'all know of families that would be interested in something, we could arrange something where we know attendance would be good because office hours, for whatever reason, have never really been well attended on our end. Since this is the last professional development webinar of the calendar year, I just wanted to say a quick note about professional development credit. If you're in Power School and checking on your credit and you see anything missing that you might have attended, feel free to reach out to us and we'll check with our contact on the State Department of Education side just to see if there are any issues. But I just wanted to do a quick plug for that so that we can do kind of a end of the calendar year check-in and then a end of the academic year check-in to make sure y'all are getting all of the professional development credit that you're eligible for.
Professional development hours, the link is on the screen. Our help desk line is open to you, students and family. Just call us or text us at 334-316-6155, weekdays from 9 to 5 p.m. And as always, stay connected with us through our website, alabamagoestocollege.org, by calling or texting us at 334-316-6155 or emailing us at algoestocollege@alabamapossible.org. Again, thank you all for joining us today.